The hottest show on radio. Raw and insightful interviews with movers, shakers, tastemakers, and experts. This is the Karen Hunter Show.
She looks like a movie star.
What's the
like
deal?
a chocolate candy bar.
How you
she
feel?
looks like a movie star. Like a chocolate candy bar.
Karen Hunter.
All right, Dr. Greg Carr from the great Howard U is here. H-U, you know? I think that's what you say?
That's what they say.
Okay,
I guess
all right.
I say you know too.
You
Yeah,
know.
that's true.
Come on, you got to say you know.
I say you know.
And we're bringing a little Ivy League into. We were just talking about Carter G. Woodson, who was also from Harvard, just other places. But I discovered this gentleman. Like, I'm going to claim you. Because I watch Survivor. I'm apparently the only person under the age of 60 who watches Survivor. So that's what Smiz tells me. I think there's a little age discrimination going on here. He's like, my parents watch. My mother still watches. I was like, all right, Smiz.
I used to watch it with them.
All right, whatever. I'm loyal. I'm even in this season.
That's great.
With all of everybody, Sandra, Rob. I'm in it.
This is the one to be in right now. Yes.
So I watched the first week to see how many black people are on. And it's my contention, if there's two or more gathered, we're going to win. And I've been correct because black people actually do stick together. Let's stop fighting that, that myth. We do stick together when given the opportunity, and I've watched it play out.
Well.
So last season,
season 39
two or more.
Yeah.
If we're on the same team.
Same tribe. Okay,
you think about it. Go through the history.
All right, I'll go through
and when
the history.
they had,
I'll test that theory
hold on.
out.
I'm going to introduce you
Right.
before I argue with you. All right. He was on Survivor. He's a Brown graduate. He's a great guy, psychology person. Let me welcome to the show Mr. Jamal Shipman.
Hey, what's going down, everybody?
See? That year they did the experiment where they separated the
yes,
teams.
Season 13.
The last
Cook
three
Islands.
were black.
That's right. And Earl took the
four,
cake.
four.
Yeah.
3 made it to the finals.
That's right.
The year, a couple of years that Sandra won, I believe my girl, who was the nurse?
Serene, yeah.
was on one of those teams.
That's true.
If there's 2 or more, which is rare, they only put 2 of us in at a time.
Right. But season 39 was different because it was me and Lauren on Vokai, and then you had Aaron and Missy on Lyra.
Yes, but Aaron doesn't identify as black.
That is not true.
Okay,
Take
let's
that
talk.
back right now.
Aaron, the one with the socks?
Aaron, the one
with
with
the child
socks.
with the white
he
wife?
is as black. You just had a show talking about how you could show up in the world
All right, whatever.
and
Come
be
on,
black
tell me,
and
tell
be
me,
amazing
tell me.
at what
All
you
right,
do.
so he was black?
Black. Absolutely.
But y'all,
Absolutely.
there was only 2 of you on one team.
There was 2
each. But you weren't together.
But then when we merged, 4 black people made the merge.
Right, but
That's
here's
amazing.
what happened. Young black girl called it out. What was her name?
Lauren, you talking about?
Lauren. Didn't she say, Jeff, this is the first time in history.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And he didn't like
Missy.
that.
No, you're talking about Missy. Yeah. No, Missy called out Jeff saying, not called out, but just
she did
pointed
call him
out.
She did call him out because he was,
Yeah.
he was a little salty though. I could tell.
He did the thing where he was like, well, if I would have called it out,
I would have been
then I would have been
racist.
that guy, you
Right.
know, who like sees color, and I thought I should just thinking it's remarkable that a black person could win immunity. It's just like everybody else.
Right.
So that was his whole point.
Right, which was bogus.
Right.
And he showed himself that day. But the next week she went home. I was like,
both of them did.
They did. Both of them. Bam, bam. Because they had double
They took 'em
elimination.
right
I was
out.
like,
Yeah.
they on some CBS, y'all on
I
some
know.
bull.
It was
But
4 people of color in a row because it was Kelly Kim.
Oh, right.
And then me.
You.
And then Aaron,
boom,
and then
boom,
Missy.
boom.
Yeah.
Got rid of all of y'all.
Yeah, yeah.
They were like, we're not going to, there's going to be a mutiny. Because they saw what was happening.
Yeah, there was a power center for sure. There was a struggle. There was definitely a power struggle.
And that was that the same season with the sexual assault? Because the young lady she's still mad. And she should be.
There were cases of inappropriate touching.
Yes, that dude was touching everybody.
Language is
I think
important.
he touched you too. Did he touch you too,
He
Jamal?
did not touch me.
Okay, all right.
I wish he would.
All
No,
right,
he did not
just
touch me.
Yeah. All right, so Jamal, so
Yes, ma'am.
you had the pivotal moment that I thought was one of the most beautiful moments in Survivor history, where you had a guy on your team, you were cooking. There was some rice being cooked. The pot was hot. You used your buff, which we've called it since 20 years
Season 1,
ago.
It's always known as a buff, yeah.
To pick up the pot, and he says to you, "Why didn't you use your do-rag, or you should use your do-rag?" And you tell us what happened, because the audio's horrible.
Sure. So that is exactly what happened. And first of all, his name is Jack, and he's my boy.
Okay.
I like Jack a lot. Jack is a friend of mine. We lived together during the airing of our season. So we were roommates for a while. So we were friends. Like we were hanging out, which actually ties into the point I like to make about this at the end of it. But that is what happened. He offhandedly calls my buff a do-rag, and I'm the only black person on my tribe at that time. And so the question is, why does my buff become a do-rag, but everybody else's is a buff? And so I just had a very natural reaction that was like, hey, what? What do you mean do-rag? Like do-rag? And then I do the whole thing. That was kind of deep-seated. Like what was going on there for you? And he felt bad. He felt bad about it. And I appreciate that he kind of immediately saw that it struck me. And to his credit, right? When he saw that, he didn't get defensive. He didn't, say, oh, I'm not racist. I didn't mean anything by it. You could take a joke, lighten up. It's not a big deal. He came over to me right away and said, hey, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. And I would like to talk more about this later. And that's why I respect him so much for that, because he took that opportunity to really let me know that he took it to heart, that someone that he cared about, because we were allies in the game, we were friends, and he took the time to really understand why it bothered me, because I don't think he fully understood. He just knew that I reacted not the way that he thought I would to a joke that he was making.
What did he think you were going to do? What was the thought?
I don't think he was thinking, and that is also my point, right? Like there was something subconscious about him using that language, I think. And so I think it was a real moment for him to take stock of what's going on in him that made him say that.
So I brought it to the airwaves because I thought your handling of that, and this is what made it powerful for me, because I always picture myself in that situation. And I would not have handled it that way. Mm-hmm. But you handled it brilliantly. Like you had words and you had enough measure. Like I might have given him his whole lunch to eat verbally. And it would have turned into a thing. Yeah. I wouldn't even raise my voice, but I would have told him all about his ancestors. And like I'm always warm and ready for somebody to come swiftly.
Right.
So I'm prepared for that. Mm-hmm. You took it in a direction that made it a teachable moment, not just for that young man there, but for a whole host of other white folk for whom that is built and baked into their DNA almost. Like that reaction, that visceral kind of, racism that is built in that you can't quite say what it is, because it's one of those, well, I just said that. Why is that? That's not the N-word, Yep. Is your psychology training, does that give you that, or was it your family, your background?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, where does that come from, right?
Yeah.
And I heard you talking on the show about, like, people can come at a situation like that from all different angles, and everybody is right. Like, if you can do it, great, but do it how you do, and we're all part of that same fight. I think for me, I've just been in the world of education, independent school education, for such a long time. I was an admissions counselor at 2 different prep schools for the past 9 years, working with the children of very affluent white kids and parents. And I have just had to develop a way to communicate and present myself so that I can be heard and so that I can get through to the ultimate goal, which is for people to be more understanding, right? And to check their behavior and care about me as a person, right? That's how we change the world, right? One handshake at a time. If you know somebody who identifies differently than you, you're more likely to be sympathetic to their experience. And so I was that for a lot of people for a long time. So I just kind of developed a skill set that was like, okay, I hear your heart. I know where you're at. I know that you're not carrying ill will towards me. Maybe you didn't mean it this way, but this is an opportunity to have a deeper conversation in a way that you might not have heard before. So that's really where it came from. It was very instinctual. I kind of put the game aside and just had a really heart-to-heart moment with a friend. We were friends out there.
I felt that moment made some people uncomfortable, including. But we'll get to that in a second. I want to know where you come from. Where are you from, Jamal Shipman?
Yeah, so I grew up in Jersey City.
Oh,
so right across the river. Yeah, Jersey City guy. I grew up in Jersey City, public school.
What school did you go to? Snyder?
No, PS 27. I went to public school from kindergarten to 8th grade, which is where my mom teaches right now. She's a 4th grade teacher at PS 27. And I actually got into the Prep for Prep program here in New York, which is a program here that prepares inner city students of color for independent schools, day schools in New York, and boarding schools across the East Coast. So I went to Milton Academy for high school, which is outside of Boston. So that was my high school experience, 9th through 12th grade.
Is that a boarding school?
It's a boarding school.
Give me one story that just kind of captures that 4-year experience.
Yeah. Well, it's the topic of my college essay, so I know it very well. Just that experience, right, of literally coming from a very mixed background, right, and truly mixed, right. Like when I was in public school, there was Indians, Filipinos,
it's Jersey
right,
City,
Hispanics, Black people. Like it was a true mix. It wasn't homogeneous, and so going to Milton was such a culture shock because that's when I truly understood the concept of minority. Like that didn't make any sense to me for a while because I was like, why are we called minorities, right? And all the, the media and everything, all the minorities. What does that mean? Everywhere I look, I see all kinds of people. I'm not in the minority. But when I got up there, I was like, oh, okay. So they just have their own thing over here. And I represented the attempt of the school to kind of level the playing field and bring in students of color to kind of diversify the school a little bit. So that first day they had the first assembly, the whole entire high school. They had the bleachers, the bleachers that they go on an angle, and it's like 800, maybe 700 kids in the school, and just the visual is striking. Like just white people, just all white, and little spots here and there, little clusters, because the Black people stick together in these kinds of environments. And that was my first reckoning of like, okay, I'm doing something different. I'm doing something different here. And just constantly being aware of how I was being perceived, just constantly like wondering, like, why are you talking to me different than you're talking to him? And why are you, calling me out in ways that you wouldn't call out the white students? And why are you making assumptions about how I grew up and what I hear in my neighborhood? Just to constantly being reminded that, okay, I'm representing something that I don't even fully understand for these white people. I'm actually learning about their assumptions about Black people through their assumptions about me, which is fascinating experience for a 14-year-old kid.
What can we learn? Because, the other thing that was stunning is that while you were on this island, survivor, had that experience, handled it with elegance and grace, you were still 100% very, very Black and unapologetic in that, right? Like I knew when I was watching you, which is why I'm like, when I reached out to you on Twitter, I'm like,
we were talking it up.
I got to have you on here because the navigation of that space was so important, because I know you changed heart and minds without giving up a piece of yourself, which we get a lot of us when we go into those environments. We lose ourselves. We become very milquetoast, and our tones are much more muted, and we don't want to agitate the white people and make them afraid of us, and so we bring it all the way down, and we become facsimiles of ourselves.
Yeah.
But you weren't. You were very I felt like you were you, got your message across, and did so without compromising your Blackness.
Wow. I appreciate you saying that, because I think for Black people who go to these predominantly white schools in high school and in college, I think that's a big fear that we all have. I think I can speak for all of them. This fear of losing ourselves, not being connected to the culture, going back home and being too white, talking too proper for the neighborhood, but then going to the school and not being white enough or being too Black to be assimilated there. So you're caught in this middle ground, and you have this identity crisis almost. So that means a lot that you're saying that right now. And I think that's a testament to maturity, right? Growth, and losing some of that caring about what other people think, right? Because you're right. I was completely myself. And I felt safe to do that. And this is where, again, I do credit Jack, because he made me know that he was prioritizing our relationship, right? He was prioritizing our friendship. I probably couldn't come at any white person the way that I came at Jack. You know what I mean? Like, I think he made it possible for me to know that I could go there with him, and he would hear me and he would receive me. Otherwise, I might have been quiet. I might have not said anything, because I'm playing a social game, right? And so I need to prioritize my own win.
$1 million on the line.
$1 million on the line. How am I going to come off, trying to get on my soapbox, and they'll be like, yeah, let's vote the angry Black guy off. You know what I mean? Like, I had to avoid that. But in this moment, I was like, I can do this. This makes sense to me to have this conversation with this guy.
I'm going to juxtapose that, because you're a man. You're a tall man. You're
Correct.
a big man. You're not just, because I noticed, too, that they don't cast people like me.
What do you mean?
They don't. I'm
They
saying
might.
something.
They don't cast
There was-
women
there was-
with
there was-
the African paradigm
No,
of beauty.
no. I have a particular kind of personality. The closest to me is Sandra.
You think so?
Yeah.
There's a couple. Vesepia from
but
way
they don't-
back in the day.
Yes.
You know.
But it's rare, and most of the men that they cast are like, who's the gravedigger? James,
Yeah.
somebody that may not, do you know what I'm saying?
I know what you mean.
They're tropes. Like they cast in these very stereotypically, like they would think that they're casting a particular personality type by bringing me on, and then get their whole entire lives rocked, right? Because it's not what you see. Like I know what I see with Sandra is not what I really see, and she wins though, and she could she's playing that woman. I'm like, so give me some
She's pretty
behind the
special.
scenes.
Well. So first of all, this was Jeff Probst's first cast, so there was a big mix-up in the casting world of Survivor. So Jeff Probst was the most hands-on in casting our season. That's why you saw a lot of diversity. So not only was there 4 black people, but you had Karishma,
Right.
the first Indian American.
She got on my last nerve.
I understand.
Can I
but
stand her?
Representation matters. She was out there.
Dude, y'all could have done better with that representation. She was.
All right, you had Vince, who's Hmong out there. You had
Yes.
Kelly Kim, right? You had Nora, who is also has a Middle Eastern background. So you had a very diverse cast, and I think that is kind of what made it real interesting, right? And that's what made the landscape so rife with the opportunity to have those clashes
Right.
and talk them through.
Right,
That
right.
wasn't. I mean, you saw not even half of it, right? Like
Okay.
we had deep conversations about difference and race and everyone's experience. Like me and Karishma had really amazing conversations.
Did you?
Yeah.
She got on my last nerve. If I never hear her name again, I'm good with
I
it.
understand.
All right.
She had a particular
No, she had
role
a victim.
on
She
the
was
show.
playing this victim thing. Like,
mentality,
I don't understand. And I was like,
Yeah.
girl, please. Money wise,
She lasted longer than me.
she did. Yeah, and I think if you had not had that moment, you would have lasted longer. Because I think
You
once
think?
when white people are confronted with it, even though your boy was good and y'all ended up being cool, I think it set a table for you. That, we can't say do-rag. And once you don't allow somebody to do something that they want to do, whether it's the N-word or whatever, they will say, I'm wrong. But it's unconscious bias is what we're always constantly fighting, right? As soon as you point something out, somebody did, then they're like coming for you, so to speak. And you shouldn't have been out that. I was like, oh, I know. I knew right after that. I was like, he's going to be next because you just made everybody uncomfortable.
No, I don't see the one-to-one. I hear what you're saying in terms of like watching it. I was out there. I know there was a lot more that you don't know that was out there and the vibe and all that. What I will say though is I think more at play was the fact that very early on, people felt more comfortable with each other than they felt with me, right? I think there were some alliances that were forming early on that I clearly couldn't crack because there was just a comfort level, right? I think I'd had that extra hurdle of distrust and waiting to see who is this guy.
Based
right?
on?
I would say probably based on race, based on my size, based on my lived experience. That's probably a little bit different than everybody else.
We're talking with Jamal Shipman. Of course, Dr. Carr is here. You can jump in at any time. I'm just like, I don't know. Do you watch Survivor?
I'm listening. No, but I'm taking notes.
Okay, all right. You don't have to.
It's a
If
good
you
show.
haven't been, it's a
good
fascinating
show.
social experiment
It
where
really
they
is.
grab people.
Well, I remember from back in the day.
Right. They
Yeah.
put them on an island.
Yeah.
Back in the day, they literally had to like eat rats and stuff.
Right.
Now,
That's what
do
I
they
remember.
feed you now?
No.
So that
They
rice
don't
is your
feed
rice?
you. They give you a bowl of rice that you have to make last for 20 days because that's the merge, and that's all you get.
Except for some of the
Then you
reward
get some of these
challenges.
rewards
Right.
here and there, but the rewards that I got, because Vokai was strong in the beginning. I don't know if you remember that
Yes,
part
I
of the
do
show,
remember,
but
yes.
Vokai was killing it. We had a guy on the tribe that was really good at puzzles. I don't know if you saw that. That was
It
me.
was you. Yeah, I know. Come on.
Yeah.
I was rooting.
But we got donuts.
And who
We got
should be
pastries,
eating donuts?
and it's just like it tasted good, because
Sugar high.
you're
Yeah, but
without
it's
the
not
sugar,
good, right.
but it's not sustaining you,
Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I lost a lot of weight,
Okay.
a lot of water weight, yeah.
Something that you ate that we didn't see you eat.
Oh, we ate all kinds of stuff, yeah. So when we was over at Lyro, Kelly and Dean were really good at crabbing. So they would go on the rocks, and they came back with like buckets of crabs just from the rocks, and we boiled them, ate them up. I probably ate those crabs for like 3 hours straight, just sitting there, just sucking on the juices, every single leg. Like, I've never cleaned out a crab shell.
Okay. Why'd you want to do Survivor?
I was a fan, like you, right? And I did the thing where you're sitting on the couch and you're just like, I could do that. I think I could do that, you know? Yeah. So I'm there, and you know, I'm a psychology major, so I'm appreciating the psychological experiment that is the game, and wondering if I have the chops to be, you know, manipulative and deceitful and win $1 million. Like, why wouldn't you want to do that?
Where'd you go to the bathroom?
That's the big question. That's the $1 million question right there.
Well, that would be the only thing that would keep me off that, because I need my space. I need to, you know,
Right.
you know what I'm saying?
Not
Out the
alone.
car, stuff got to, like, I can't
Right.
go public. I can't even go to a public
I
restaurant.
don't know too many black women who can, frankly.
Yeah, it's just like it's nasty.
I
People
can't
nasty.
think of yeah.
I'm like, all right, am I digging a hole in the sand?
know?
Am I going in the ocean? And then if I'm going in the ocean, then it's like stuff's floating in the oceans. I don't want to swim through that. Please,
Well,
Jamal, help me.
this is what you do. So you have some code words out there, right? So you got the camera guys all over and filming everything. So you say, hey, everybody, I'm going to the Coconut Grove. That's the code word. So if you're ever watching Survivor, you hear somebody say Coconut Grove, that means they're going to go do their business. So you say, oh, I'm going to do Coconut Grove, I'll be back. And so then you wade over into the little tide pool. You know, you got the rocks around so the waves aren't, you know, pushing you over. You know, you brace yourself, you take a little squat.
So you're going in the ocean.
Absolutely. And the waves gently, you know,
Wash
encourage
it.
you
It's
to
like
do,
a nice,
do your thing.
nice
That makes
natural
sense.
bidet.
It is. I got to tell you, it is a beautiful experience.
It's cleaner.
It's gorgeous. The sun's setting. You know, the air is warm. It's really. I recommend it.
So what if someone has to come right behind you? Is there only one of these?
Well, the ocean's big.
Okay, all right. No, but it seems like y'all created this space here.
Yeah, it's where you go, but you know, you just make sure there's no
other
brown
person.
tuna floating around.
Oh
That's
my
all.
God.
And that's where we end up anyway, right? That's where all the waste ends
That's
up
what
anyway.
I'm talking about.
In the
You're
water.
swimming with the sharks.
Just
and
cut out the
you know,
middleman. That's all.
The fishes. It's
I
all there.
want to hear this. I watch Disney films, and it's like, you know,
And, yeah.
Finding Nemo. I'm
Disney,
like,
Disney creates a world where people don't go to the bathroom.
Right.
that is true.
Right.
That is
right.
true.
No, it's very real. Very
All right.
real on
This
Survivor.
is fascinating.
The biggest challenge of being out there. How many days did you last?
I lasted 24 days. It's
not bad.
Not
It's
bad.
a
little over 3
39
weeks.
day
39
adventure.
days, exactly. And I did all the milestones except for the family visit. That was the big one that I wish I gave my mom the opportunity to come out and support me out in Fiji, but I couldn't do it.
The school teacher.
Yeah, that would have been nice. She had her bags packed. It was like right there. Like she almost was about to get on the plane.
Damn people.
I know, they
And then
messed
there
it
was
up.
there was a structural firing of the blacks. Is that what you said?
No. So you vote off. So it's an island.
Right, I got that.
Blah, 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 blah.
But within the space of a minute, they were all gone.
No, it was. What is the
It was
time frame?
two episodes, so it's in about 3 days.
3 days. Okay.
So I
So
got
they
voted
pro-
out. Then 3 days
Right,
later,
so you
Aaron and Missy gets
compete,
voted out.
and then if
Lauren
you go ahead.
makes it all the way to the end.
Lauren does
Lauren
make
makes
it.
it. She makes it to 4th place.
Okay.
So she's in the finale,
Okay.
and she represented. She was out there.
She did. Boy.
I'm listening to y'all talk, and I'm thinking, this is a clinical kind of thing. The questions you're asking, the answers y'all's back and forth, and I'm thinking to myself, a cat from Jersey City, whose mother's a school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we know what has happened on the shores of the Hudson over there. I lived in Jersey City when I was clerking for the Legal Defense Fund. I get up every morning and go through. It was really heavily Spanish speaking, but a lot of black folk. And of course, now it's
Very Indian.
Oh my goodness! But I'm thinking for them to pick you out and to put you in that program. And there was similar programs. I remember like A Better Chance in Princeton. I mean, there's different kind of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
then
it's all seeds and
no question.
Yeah, stepping stone, all those things.
Then you move into a white facing environment
Mm-hmm.
and have more or less been in that white facing environment since then, the whole time.
Basically.
But listening to this, I'm thinking to myself, first of all, I'm very tired. No, because I'm thinking about, Ralph Ellison, Invisible Man. When Ellison says, I'm invisible because you refuse to see me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying a cat named Jamal, first of all, and I want to ask you where your name came, right? Moving into this space like that in Rhode Island, then going to Brown, then coming into this space, and then working in the space you work in.
Yeah.
Boarding school is the kind of thing that this cat, Richard Dawkins, went to boarding school in England. He's born in Kenya. But anyway, so.
I can't wait to have that conversation.
But
let's
same
do it.
thing. One of the oldest 3 boarding schools in England. Then he goes to Oxford, and one of the oldest colleges in Oxford. Very white facing, and would say that he's not a racist. I guess when I asked the question was running through my mind and still running through my mind. How difficult is it to always be the teacher?
Mm.
In other words,
that is a good
to
question.
live your humanity in a way that you are constantly on display for others to learn in a space where they have the option to learn or not to learn.
Right.
Because I wonder how many of those people you've engaged over the last decade plus 2 decades close now of your life would come to where you grew up and sit with your mom and her students and teach them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm asking.
No, it's a great question. So what I would say to that is, first of all, I'm an educator, right? So I just have that gene that likes to be in educative spaces. When you're talking to a 14-year-old, you are always teaching.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Whether it's about race and why they said what they said is inappropriate, or it's, can you please get your homework done before 9:30 so I don't have to yell at you? Like it's the same as you're just teaching all the time.
No question.
So I just have that educator vibe to me. But also what I would say is I don't have a monopoly on wisdom about lived experience.
No, of course.
I have my experience, and it is the easiest thing to teach because it's mine. But I challenge myself to also understand my own power, right? Like, I don't understand what it's like to be a woman. I don't understand what it's like to be Muslim in a post 9/11 world. I don't understand what it's like to be trans, to be homosexual, right? So I challenge myself to also be learning all the time. Right. But I can offer my own perspective, and that's my gift to the collective community of learning and inclusive inclusive community that we're trying to create in these schools. Yeah. So it doesn't get exhausting because I'm not seeing myself as always teaching. I'm seeing myself as participating, and we're all learning and teaching each other.
That sounds, it sounds like what W.E.B. Du Bois said. 1897, he gave a talk called The Conservation of Races. He said, this is why you cultivate culture. You cultivate culture so that you can develop a broad sympathy. So rather than the Negro, as he would say, or black people or people of African descent shrinking, no, you solve it by growing. So you didn't move. You just kept expanding. Yes. And when you keep expanding, people have to deal with you.
That's what I loved about
powerful.
Jamal Shipman. That's why, yeah. And we're going to talk when we come back, since Dr. Carr brought up Richard Dawkins. He, on Twitter, pain in heart, said something to the effect that eugenics as a practice is not so bad. Let's talk about why that's problematic when we come back. Richard Dawkins, who I had a beef with, yeah, it was weird. This was before social media. This had to be early, mid-90s. I was on CNN talking about atheists, and I made a wisecrack like they probably need a holiday or something, or maybe a greeting card. They need to, because in my mind I was thinking, who knows who's an atheist? Right. It's not like I know you're black, I know you're a man, I know, like I can look at you. I don't know what your religious practice is unless you make me know it. And if you're in the Bible Belt making me know it, then you must have an agenda. So I was calling that out, and Richard Dawkins sicked all of his people on me. This is before there was a social media. Whoa. They hit every email address I ever had with like these, and I'm stupid. I'm answering all of them, not thinking that there was like this army
organized
of people.
effort.
Yeah,
right.
I didn't even realize. I was like, I'm like and your mama. Yeah, like I'm hitting everybody.
He like Neo fighting everybody.
They did a video putting me next to Martin Luther King. Like, you can find it if you look for it. It's like really ridiculous. Like, how dare you say these things, and Martin Luther King, whatever. I was like, oh, and that was the first time I understood the power of this. This is why I understand Trump. Because of Richard Dawkins. That's how powerful that movement is and was. And I don't know what your religious background is, Jamal, but we'll talk about that when we come back as well. But I want to hit, and it's not about atheism. I love God. That's my business. But what he's talking about, eugenics in this time, I think is extremely dangerous. But we got to go to break. Let me tell you about One United Bank. I know y'all, the New York Times has jumped in on this. This is when I got a little angry because they need to mind their business. This is family business. Us talking about Harriet Tubman and whether she should be on a card or not. Mind your business, New York Times, and everybody else. Mind your business. This is for us to have a discussion about.
That's right.
But it's our fault because we put it out there on Twitter. So this is a lesson for us. Can we settle our differences not in public? Let's have our conversations. Call a council. I don't care. Maybe we go to Wakanda, have Angela Bassett preside over it, and we make a decision as a family whether or not Harriet should be on the card. Welcome back. I don't even want to break in on this. Right? The gospel rip on this makes me to my toes, just feel so black. Welcome back. Hottest show in the galaxy. Last time Dr. Greg Carr was here, he said, "Yeah, you could talk like this on the radio."
Right.
Say this the blackest show I've
The blackest.
And I'm like, we just being
This is
ourselves.
Sirius XM.
Yes, Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action. We are joined by the very wonderful erudite. Is that how we do that? Is that how I say
That's a
this?
big word.
Just to do it out there. Jamal Shipman is
take
in the
it.
building. You can follow him at Jam Man K9.
That's it.
What is the K9? You have dogs?
So that's my handle from like back in the day.
When you were the
Like,
dog.
I was on AIM, like America.
Oh, shoot.
AOL.
Okay.
Instant Messenger at 12 years
Jam
old.
Man K9.
That's it. First three letters of my first name.
I got you.
Last three letters of my last name. And
I see. Okay. All right. And we got Dr. Greg Carr, who is Africana Carr, because he's the head of the Africana department at Howard. So he's Africana Carra.
Yes.
Follow him. And
Aura.
And we're having off mic conversations, on mic conversations. They said it's President's Day, but we're celebrating it a little bit differently here.
You know, it's funny. In Atlanta 2 years ago, the Atlanta University Center tried to rename. In fact, they did that day, and they're hoping it caught on. They said, we're going to stop calling it President's Day. They call it Obama Day. At the AUC. Wow. Exactly. So I don't think he really caught on, Karen.
No.
He's a president.
Well, he was a president, but I think Obama's legacy is not going to hold up the way we thought it. Way we thought it was going to.
I don't think any of us will be alive. It may be the grandchildren who might be able to get close to an intelligent conversation about Barack Obama, but it won't be our generation, because if you say anything critical, you got to fight.
No, I think it's moving really quickly, like a bullet train. Yeah, away from.
Wow.
Away from Obama?
Yeah.
Oh, no question. It has to move away from if you're having a real conversation.
Yeah, Michelle's gonna live to stand the test of time. Barack, I don't think so.
Interesting.
Wow, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
Jamal, we having that
We're
conversation.
having that conversation. Let's
You
go.
see how black this is.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting perspectives here.
And we should, right? It's just that, right?
Absolutely.
That's right.
I may not be right. You know, these are opinions, but I think we should have, nice discourse around.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, what do we want to get? Like, I don't want to have a circular conversation. What's the goal?
What's the goal?
And if we go down this rabbit hole, where do we end up afterward? So we're not going to have that conversation today, because we can have all the phone lines lit. And we're going to, sit here all day. But we need to do something different in 2020. And we need to have an agenda that has 3 to 5 items on it, that are 3 that are must-haves, 2 that we're negotiating, because you got to throw some really ridiculous things on your list just so that you can get the first 3 things. That's how you negotiate. Like
That's right.
we need strategy. We need to be a little bit more sophisticated. We need to stop airing our dirty laundry.
Right.
We need to. But here we are. All right. So during the break, actually before we went to break, I was talking about Richard Dawkins, who is, I guess he's the head of the atheist movement. At least that's how I was introduced to him. That's what I'm gonna call him. He's the head of the.
Teach me, because I don't know much about
Richard Dawkins. He
here.
calls himself an evolutionary biologist.
Okay. Well, he's got the credentials.
Does he though?
Yeah.
So let's talk. You were breaking it down, Dr. Carr. Like he went to these schools, he did these things.
Yeah.
But if we are only learned in places that teach anti-blackness,
Right.
and I find it interesting that Carter G. Woodson went to Harvard, got a PhD, and then came out and said, "This is bull crap. All of this is like."
That's right.
So how do you suss that out if you've only been taught anti-blackness and everything that you've done, and then you say you have credentials?
Well, Karen, when you said, today you were going to take some time to talk about Dawkins, this is a very difficult conversation to have, because, Dawkins is trained, as I said. He's born in Kenya. His father was one of those colonial administrators. Lived to be 95 years old. Mom lived to be over 100 years old. They were basically African colonialists. That's what his parents did for the British government. He came back to England around 8 or 9 years old, went to a boarding school, one of the 3 oldest in England, then went to Oxford, studied with a Nobel laureate in biology, actually. Ended up getting a PhD, came over here, taught at Berkeley for a while, then went back to Oxford, which is where he stayed until he retired. He's an evolutionary biologist by training. His whole thing is, I'm dealing with reason. He said he read, I think it was Bertrand Russell's Why I'm Not a Christian or something as a teenager. And he said, at that point, I said, I'm an atheist. Why? Because it doesn't appeal to me, this make-believe religion. You know, he's one of those kind of people. And then he says, I found more explanatory force in the work of Charles Darwin. So he is an evolutionary biologist. He's saying he wrote a book called The Blind Watchmaker or something. His basic thesis is, you know, there is no intelligent design. There is no master creator. All this stuff is just accident. So how does that relate to eugenics? Well, when he says something like he just said, well, first of all, atheism. When somebody like that, with that kind of platform, who's clearly a first-rate academic, says he's an atheist, then every atheist comes out the woodwork and says, hey, he's with us. It's like they've recruited this kind of guy. And he likes the spotlight. When people criticize him, he reads the criticism, the emails, and the text on YouTube. I mean, he likes that kind of, he's a provocateur. But when somebody like that takes something that's well settled in biology and then tries to throw it out there for social commentary, that's when it goes off the rails.
Well, he said it's one thing to deplore eugenics on ideological, political, and moral grounds. He said, and he has 2.8 million followers on Twitter. It's quite another to conclude that it wouldn't work in practice. He said, of course it would. It works for cows, horses, pigs, dogs, and roses. Why on earth wouldn't it work for humans? Facts ignore ideology. What are your thoughts on that? When you're looking curious, Jamal?
I don't know what he's talking about.
Okay.
So what? He's saying that. What is he actually trying to say? That
y'all are criticizing eugenics, but it works. And I'm gonna throw the dogs in there, because when we play God with dogs, for example, and you can come up with a snickerdoodle, or you breed animals, they always have defects. They always have physical, mental, some sort teeth. They don't live long.
The hips don't
work
do,
right.
Yeah.
The longest living, most healthy animals are mutts.
Right.
I got an 11-year-old mutt right now.
Yeah, they live long.
Strong.
When we human genetic, when we manufacture and put this together with that, or we eliminate these genes or what have you, I don't know what he's saying, but I know he's saying something. And it's a dog whistle. It's very loud.
Is it?
I think it. Is it a dog whistle?
Think about natural selection. If animals select other animals by natural selection, then whatever is produced is a consequence of their attraction for whatever reason. There's social attraction, there's biological, physiological attraction. But here's the thing, the concept eugenics, and all eugenics means, the word literally means to create a better group, a better gene pool, a better brain. Think about natural selection in the social context. What are we kind of socialized to like? Here's the problem. Eugenics up until World War II is considered a fairly uncontroversial and positive term. Eugenics, the eugenics movement, is really the beginning of something that we can think of as race science.
Margaret Sanger.
No, Planned Parenthood, a peaceful form. Some people shouldn't have babies. That's what she's saying. And she's being embraced by people, not just the scientists. I'm talking about social science. Think of this, for example. The IQ test. All that stuff comes out of the eugenics movement. So people are taking tests. Why? So you're trying to identify who's the better. And I'm sure, Jamal, in the spaces that you had to move in, man, people have families that say, yeah, you don't want to marry outside of the group that's going to the same schools. It has the same. Zona Hurston said black folks are fool over color and hair. If we're having an honest conversation, how many black people say, I want to marry him or I want to have a baby with her? Because this is the socialization to create a better. It's like a social eugenics.
I literally had a friend that married somebody because his hair was straight.
No question.
She wanted her children to have straight hair.
You understand? This is the thing. So we're not talking about science now. We're talking about social science. Race is not a biological reality. That's been established by the scientists, the geneticists. But it is absolutely a social reality. It's my friend Lou Outlaw, philosopher down at Vanderbilt. Brother Outlaw says, I can call that bus coming the wind, but if I stand in front of it, I'm going to get run over. He says, so please understand, race may not be real in your mind, but the social forces that allow for it to operate are real. Mm-hmm. So when a scientist like Dawkins comes out and says this, you know what took the geneticists left? The Nazis. The Nazis took the geneticists left, and after World War II, it was no longer something you could talk about like that. But before World War II, you could look at people. The NAACP used to have a competition for the best-looking baby and publish it in the Crisis magazine. Oh, no question. But don't we do that? Oh, this baby is so beautiful. Oh, that baby.
Based on Gerber.
I want your baby to bury my baby, right? Or whatever. You know what I'm saying? But the whole thing is social context, the social science, statistics, demography. These are branches of social science that come directly out of race science. The fact that we talk about an achievement gap between black and white students, you know what that is? You're separating people by race. But race isn't real biologically, but it's real socially. We shouldn't even be talking about achievement gap. We shouldn't be talking about blacks and whites and Latinos as groups. But the scientists laugh. Dawkins is saying, look, I'm just going to put this on the table. You know why I say it would work? Because we do it with cows, we do it with dogs, we do it with flowers. The scientists would argue with him and say, nah, I don't think that would work. But the people who make the choices every day based on how people look, because how we look is a proxy for what people think about us in groups, they're looking like, I'm glad somebody finally said it. And if we're being honest, too many of our people make decisions based on how people look. How to marry, who I want this tall person because I want my baby to be tall. Look at the NBA. I rest my case.
Yeah, well, this is uncomfortable territory
Incredibly
right here.
uncomfortable,
yeah,
brother.
Well, because what you're doing is you're blurring the line between what is genetically handed down, right, versus what is a consequence of our social construction around those things, right? So
that's what he's doing, and I'm acknowledging that's what he's doing. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And the thing that the siren that's going off in my head just listening to your recount of what he's saying is, who's making that decision?
That's
and
why I say it's a dog whistle.
Who
Television.
has the power?
It is a dog
putting
whistle.
it on the table.
Yeah, who has the power to make this decision about who shouldn't and should recreate and
right? And what's the ideal?
Yeah,
what does that look like?
The ideal is to win.
No. What's the ideal human?
Oh, for the Nazis, it was.
We knew all recessive genes, which biologically made no sense.
Come on, except if you're planning a television show on an island where you want to identify the strongest.
Survivor.
Come on now. And
All
what
right.
did you say,
Full
Karen?
circle.
And what you say, Karen? I
Nicely
never
done.
see my type
Never.
on the island.
Right,
Yeah.
because the
it's a
people
social
selecting,
eugenics.
they don't know me.
And that's the answer, Jamal.
So
That's
most
the
white people, they'll run into a Jamal
Right.
Shipman. They'll run into a Jamal Shipman, and they think they know you, right? We were talking off mic. You play the trumpet.
Yeah.
You love Wynton Marsalis.
Mm-hmm.
You know. But and then they think they're blacker than you because they know all of the hip hop lyrics. But 70% of that hip hop music is bought by y'all.
Right.
That's your music, actually, that we produce and we tell them how to treat us
Right.
through our lyrics, dummies.
And you're a top flight academic.
Right.
You don't get out. You don't get to go where you went.
So-
But how many people ask you play basketball?
Right. Well, I was literally about to say, one of my favorite things to do is when somebody says that, oh, what'd you play? What'd you play in high school? What you played something? I'm like, oh, I played the flute. I played the flute real good. I played the flute. I didn't play the flute.
Played the
I
trumpet.
did-
The trumpet would
played
be
the
just as
trumpet.
good.
It would be
Do-
just as
do
good.
you know
but
the
it's
jazz-
just a fun, play on what their expectations are.
But then that's the Do you know the brother Randy Weston just passed away a couple years ago? He's 6'7", one of the great master piano players. They always ask Randy, what did he play? Here we got Kobe made transition, speaks several languages, grew up in Europe, Italian fluently. Yeah, but why is he beloved? Because he played basketball. This is social eugenics. Because guess what? They looking at Gianna, this sister that made transition. She's 13 years old. But why is she so beloved at this moment? Because his father, daughter, yes. But also, Gianna was going to be the Kobe in the NBA, WNBA. Think of the way we're socialized to think about black possibility. Dawkins has touched the third rail in part because it was there to touch.
Yeah. Well, I think he's talking to people in a way that doesn't make me comfortable.
Me neither.
And I need us to be aware of what's coming, because we talked off mic about it. Do you travel besides Fiji?
That's the furthest. That's the furthest I've traveled and the longest I've stayed in another place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where else have you been?
I've been to Puerto Rico, where my mother's side of the family is from. I've been to Spain, Germany, a little travel, not too much.
We're talking about Africa and how
I haven't been there yet.
Bondage was 400 years in my estimation, because people did not see themselves. They didn't see it coming.
They did
People
not.
had a plan for their
That's right.
whole entire continent
That's right.
that they weren't privy to. They didn't see it coming, so they weren't prepared, didn't know how to combat it. And we talk colonization, slavery, all that can happen when you're not ready for what's coming. So I need to be ready for everything.
Yeah, no, I see what you're doing. You're putting the defenses up. You're starting to read, like you keep saying, dog whistle. It's how to decode what is the modern day racism and how it comes across, because you can't quite come out and say, the things you used to be able to say, right? So you start to code it. And so if you ever call it out, you have this safe out, right? To say, well, no, that's not what I meant. You're making it about race. I'm just talking about, housing, and I'm just,
And if we say it enough, people get comfortable with it. Like we're comfortable with Trump, even though a lot of us are not comfortable. No, I know, but we are. The man retweeted a video of a public official going to the bathroom.
Right.
Under normal circumstances, you would say the president of the United States shouldn't be doing things like that.
Right.
But we say, oh, that's Trump.
Right.
So we have become almost anesthetized to his lunacy.
And what is he tapping into that allows us to have
I don't know.
this?
It's crazy.
Well, I'm saying Dawkins is touching that.
Well, I think it's really about the people who see Trump do something like that and think that that's fine. It's that instinct to try to see a reflection of themselves in power.
What, a fifth grader?
That's it.
It's crazy.
That's it.
And
Or either seeing themselves or knowing that they could be better than what's in the White House.
I wanted to have Jamal. I wanted to have you here today,
Yeah.
because I wanted to have you on frequently. Because I think I want to have you come through and have conversations. What are you doing in your life that we can support?
Yeah,
and tell us.
Thank you for asking. Yeah, for sure. So if you watch Survivor, you know that there's a woman named Janet Carbon. And Janet and I were allies out on the island, and we dealt with some of the issues that came up on our season, especially when it came to the inappropriate touching and just kind of connecting on trying to live our values. And so what we're going to do is she and I are going to team up, and we're going to put programming together for schools, for communities, and it's going to be called Keeping Your Fire Alive. Keeping Your Fire Alive. And so we're going on a speaking tour.
She's a lifeguard.
She's a lifeguard.
Yeah.
She is badass.
Yeah.
Janet is a powerful,
she can make
powerful
fire.
lady. She can make fire. She's 60
Quickly.
years old. She broke all kinds of records. She lasted all the way to the end. Got Idol nullified out, which was a real controversy.
Crazy.
Yeah, but she and I are teaming up, and so that's something that you could support. So
Where
if
do we
you're
go?
interested in that work or learning more about it, you can email me at survivorjamal@gmail.com. Creative name, I know.
JAMAL for those of you.
JAMAL. Yep, survivorjamal@gmail.com, and we'll get more information to you. But we're just getting off the ground. We got our pilot session going up in April, and then from then on we'll have promo material, and we're gonna do it big, trying to change the world.
I would love for you to come back when you next time you're in New York, so we can keep having conversations about different things. Because we just scratched the surface. I have so
for
many other
sure.
questions about Survivor and the money, because that was where I was going next. But we don't have time to get into all your pockets and stuff. And are you still teaching?
I'm not.
Still.
No.
So
I went out. Yeah, I'm now working at a software company called Veracross.
Wow.
Yeah. I went into the corporate world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Getting that dollar. I ain't mad at you.
I am in it. What is my title? Admission Product Area Consultant at Veracross, working with independent schools and their computer software.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool spot. Yeah, it's a pretty cool job, but still staying connected to education. I'll never be too far from working with kids.
And your mom's still in Jersey City teaching, which is dope.
Absolutely,
Man,
yeah.
props to her, man.
Yeah, she's in the trenches.
All right, we got to go, unfortunately, because you got to catch a bus, too. So thank you, Jamal Shipman. Appreciate you. Dr.
Thank
Carr
you.
sticking around.
Karen Hunter.